Thank you for joining us this evening as we discuss reproductive rights here in the state of Tennessee with our Democratic candidate for governor here in Tennessee, Councilman JB Smiley Jr. Councilman.
Thank you. I think we just want to start the conversation about where we are as it relates to reproductive rights, bodily autonomy in our society. Not specifically just talking about Tennessee, but the society as large. We know not too long ago, it feels like yesterday, when the Supreme Court basically went into the homes and into the lives of every single person in our country and took away reproductive rights, took away the decision that is intimate decision from every person in our country. And we're talking about taking away the right to make decisions regarding reproductive care for every single person who can give birth. And that's not right. So my role in all of this is trying to figure out how we can resist. And I say we, I mean every single person that calls this country home. And there is some creative legislation out there. And what I tell all of my colleagues who are elected on a local level is, we're the last line of defense. If we don't stand up for the people, they have no alternative. So for me, it was about trying to figure out what we can do. But before I talk specifically about what we're doing in Memphis and the legislation that I think every local municipal body should be drafting and putting in place, I want to play, I think it's a 4-minute clip of the particular piece of legislation that I proposed yesterday in the city of Memphis, and that was passed. So can we play the video, please?
Chair, I read this resolution known as Reproductive Autonomy as Necessary Act into the record. And I don't think I want to belabor the point. I think we know what times we live in. I often find myself thinking about times in which we had laws on the book that didn't necessarily reflect the will of our country. There were laws on the books previously in which I was considered 3/5 of a man. There was laws on the books in which women were considered property. There was laws on the books in which that did not allow interracial marriage. There was laws on the book that did not allow same-sex marriages. But what happened in those times, people all across this country, people who believe that the rights of individuals were highly valuable, they stood up. And I think we find ourselves in this time. Local elected bodies are the last line of defense that we have. So I was going to give a very lengthy presentation, but I want folks to understand this. We have a moral obligation to do whatever we can to protect our right to privacy. If we pay particular attention to some of the statements made by Justice Clarence Thomas, what he stated specifically is that there's other rights that are soon to follow, other rights that will soon be attacked, and we have to stand up. Our job is to represent the people. Our job is to keep people safe. Our job is to protect the folks in our community. What we can do, and I think Councilman Jones says this all the time, the role of this body is to pass legislation, but also we have a responsibility as it relates to the budget. This resolution speaks specifically to our ability to control funding. We have the ability to control what resources are being allocated when it comes to the potential prosecution or lack thereof, the potential allocation of resources to specific departments for tracking individuals who are simply trying to do the best they can as it relates to their reproductive health. And I know this may make some of you uncomfortable, but guess what? Leadership is uncomfortable. Leadership requires us to make a clear distinction between what's right and wrong. I believe you all know that this is wrong. My only question for each and every person on this body is, will you have enough courage to push back against these type of hateful, divisive pieces of legislation that's coming forward? We have to stand up, and I hope each and every one of you, when you vote, You understand there are millions of people across this country wanting the city of Memphis to lead. We led when it was time to implement a mask mandate. In COVID, we were one of the first municipalities to do that. Hopefully, we will be one of the first municipalities to say, you know what, women are entitled to make decisions regarding their bodies. And oftentimes when we have this discussion about the line being drawn, that's always the question, but the truth of the matter is, let's redirect it. It's not about where the line should be drawn, it's about who gets to draw the line. And women get to draw the line. And I trust women to draw their line for themselves. And the question is always about third trimester. Less than 1% of abortions enter in the third trimester. Those women usually are expecting to carry their child full term. They're often preparing for life with child. But when they make that decision, it's oftentimes due to something outside of their control. We have to trust women. We shouldn't be trying to regulate what happens with them and their doctor in their personal capacity. And if I can be very direct, and Sam, you're here, government needs to mind its own business. With that, I'm finished.
Wow, that was very powerful speaking on the matter. So let me ask you, what exactly does the R.A.I.N Act you introduced yesterday mean for the citizens of Memphis, Tennessee?
Okay, so the purpose of the R.A.I.N Act, every local municipal body usually has a law enforcement agency. For us, particularly in the city of Memphis, is the Memphis Police Department. And when you're talking about prosecuting crimes, there's always a component of whether or not the police department will, or the sheriff's department will go out and investigate, whether they'll be using their resources to get information, and whether or not they'll be using their resources to pass the information along to another governmental body, usually the district attorney's office. And what this resolution does, it acts and it tells, let me put it this way, it represents the will of our body. Since we control the dollars, the funding for these agencies, what we're saying is if there's any resources allocated to the prosecution of someone who is attempting to make a reproductive healthcare decision, if there is any resources allocated to investigating a physician or doctor or healthcare provider for helping someone in the process of making reproductive healthcare decisions, we will zero it out. What that means is we are not giving any funding. If we see funding going there, we will take that funding away. Essentially, we are not putting any dollars into prosecution. We're not putting any dollars into collecting. We're not putting any dollars into surveilling. And go one step further, we will not turn over any information we receive to another entity to investigate these issues that should not be labeled a crime. We know that we cannot do anything about what the state does. We cannot do anything about what the federal government does. But what local leaders should be doing across this country is zeroing out the budget when it comes to any of those things. I think the resolution specifically says we should make it the lowest priority, but it's not a priority at all if it has no resources. You can't do anything if you don't have any funding, if you don't have any, if there's no budgetary item in the budget that speaks specifically to this particular department, there is no case. And what we're trying to do is we're attempting to decriminalize abortion in the states that have enacted abortion bans. Because what we understand is, and most of these legislative bodies, they're made up, no offense, men, they're made up of mostly men. And if those men would understand anything about reproductive health or reproductive justice, they will accept the absolute truth that women are entitled to make decisions regarding their bodies. And I think the last clip that some of my colleagues have been talking about is when I said, you know what, if I can be very direct, government needs to mind its own, I will not curse today, mind its own business. And with that, I'm finished. But, I say that with a smile on my face, but it's very serious. So the reason that I want to go live today is because everybody's been asking me, what can they do in their community? How can they fight back? Reach out to, I think the Shelby County Commissioner is going to pass something similar to what passed the identical thing, legislation that we passed in Shelby in Memphis, which is the R.A.I.N Act. I sent it over to Councilman Ernest Brooks in Jackson. I know Nashville passed something similar. I know there's a local legislative body in Texas that's passed something similar. But all across the state, if local bodies say, you know what, they got it wrong. They got it wrong. And a lot of times, there's a lot of laws that have been on the books. Years ago, I was considered a 3/5 of a man. That law wasn't right. Years ago, folks were not allowed to marry whoever they so choose, whether we're talking about same-sex marriage, whether we're talking about, choosing to live the life that you wanted to, or whether you're talking about marrying someone of the opposite race. Just because a law is on a book does not mean it's just. Guess who gets to decide what's just? Each and every person on these various platforms, we get to decide if a law is just, and if a law is not just, we have an obligation, a moral responsibility to change it. I'm gonna tell you how we change it. We change it by locking arms, speaking out. And what I tell the folks that I represent in the city of Memphis all the time, I'm gonna tell you how you get legislation passed. It takes activism coupled with legislative action to make any real change. So I want you all talking about the R.A.I.N Act. I want you all encouraging your local elected leaders to implement something similar to this. Matter of fact, they can reach out to our office and we will send it to them. Because resistance starts when we're working together. This is not a specific Memphis thing. This is not specifically tied to any particular region. This is the type of information that needs to be shared. Recently, there was an article from the Associated Press talking about what we're doing here. Another article by an entity called the Tennessee Lookout. What we're doing here is saving lives. What we're doing here is protecting the right to privacy. If the Supreme Court won't protect us, if our states won't protect us, we have to protect ourselves. And we protect ourselves by becoming equipped with enough information to address these things. And we have the information here. So let me walk everybody through specifically how we get it done. I wish I would have had a foresight so that we can put a copy of the resolution here. But let me walk you line by line of how we got here and how we get here. So I think I said early on about the job of municipal legislative bodies controlling the budget. When you cannot directly change the law, because there's something called preemption. That means local law is here, state law is here, then you have federal law. Local law is at the lowest. If you can't directly change the law, there's always loopholes. There's always workaround. And what the R.A.I.N Act is a workaround. We can't expressly say we're going to implement a law contrary to the state or expressly say that we're going to implement a law contrary to the federal government. But what we can do is say, look, we're just not going to put any resources in this. We're just not going to investigate. So not only should our local elected leaders, whether you're talking about county commissioners or city council folks or aldermen, be implementing legislation similar to this, but there's also another component to it. As opposed to just zeroing out the budget related to any of these issues, we also have district attorneys. District attorneys are absolutely critical in this fight. And I say that word fight, and I mean every bit of it, because rights aren't just given to us. A lot of times the rights that we have now, we have to fight for it. Folks who came before us have to fight for it. And we're fighting for these rights. And that fight takes courageous district attorneys to say, you know what? Even if a law enforcement officer seeks someone out who decides to make a decision that should be intimately personal to them, that the right of privacy should be protected, and charges someone with an abortion crime, the district attorney has the sole authority to decide whether to prosecute or formally bring charges. We have to vote down the ballot. Particularly in Shelby County, we have a prosecutor right now who is, dancing around the question: will you prosecute someone who's making reproductive healthcare decisions? When they're dancing around, they want to tell you what they're telling you. They're telling you your rights don't matter. They're telling you that they're going to do anything they can to you. We need to elect progressive prosecutors, and specifically in Shelby County, we need to be electing folks like Steve Mulroy, who stated publicly that he will not prosecute. We need to elect folks like Glenn Funk in Nashville, who stated publicly he will not prosecute. But district attorneys are also allies in this battle. So when you're going to vote, make sure you're voting for people who understand the importance of the right to privacy. Because if we don't do that, we're in trouble. And there are comments, and I want to make sure I address a few of the comments or questions in the chat. Yep. Yusuf, you're absolutely right. Yusuf said the issue is legislators have common sense, but they have been bought and paid for. I'm gonna briefly touch on that. The truth of the matter, Yusuf, you're absolutely right. A lot of legislators, are in the pockets of lobbyists or essentially, vote the way that their party tells us to vote in absence of understanding what's decent and what's right. And, we all have an obligation. We all have an obligation this particular election. Every election cycle you hear people say, this is the election, the change all elections. This is the most important election. But if you want to be really honest about where we are now, you just take a look at the Supreme Court's last decision as related to abortion rights. Those rights have been sent back to the states. But if we look to the statement made by one of the Justice Clarence, I don't even want to say his last name. His name is just Clarence today. Clarence. He don't even get justice because he didn't deliver any justice for the people in this country. So Clarence said there's other rights that should be taken up. Rights as it relates to same-sex marriage, rights as it relates to contraceptives. And then there are some clowns in the United States Senate who also talked about, we also need to look at Brown versus Board of Education. That means potentially segregating schools again. We have to understand the moment that we live in. I fancy myself as someone who pays a particular attention to, the history. And I often ask myself, what would I do if one of my rights were being taken? Would I be one of the folks in the past who just kind of set aside and just kind of wondered what's going to happen next? Or would I be one of those folks on the front lines? Would I be a freedom rider? Would I be, marching with, would I be out in the community causing it much, bringing much attention to these type of issues until we find people, elect people that can change these laws? Well, guess what, y'all? You don't have to wonder anymore what you would do in the past. Your time is now. The time is now to stand up, speak out, but not only stand up and speak out. If your legislators, the folks that you voted for, are not supporting your right to privacy, guess what? That means you need to find a candidate to get behind that will support those rights, or it may be time for you to put your name on their ballot and run to protect the rights that you hold dear. Yeah. And when I got into politics, guess what I heard all the time? I heard that I need to wait my turn. I heard that, that young people could not lead. But if we look at history, all the changes that happened is because young folks decided today was the day. Today was the day. The Civil Rights Act, there was a young person who decided today was the day. So when I'm asking each and every one of you, you decide today is the day. Stop allowing people to tell you it's not your time. Stop allowing people to tell you, push their religious belief on you. You decide that. And what I hear all the time, in my city, we're not that progressive. I'm gonna be honest with you. I was worried if we were gonna get the R.A.I.N Act passed. And what I always understand is this: we have to decide to run anyway. There's never a perfect time. So stop thinking. If you're on the fence and you're living in what folks say is a red state and there's voter apathy, maybe it's voter apathy because your name is not on the ballot. Maybe there's voter apathy because you're not running. We have to do everything in our power to fight, and this is the moment.
And Councilman, just a little feedback that we're receiving live. Meredith from TikTok stated that they find it unbelievable that Tennessee wants to ban abortion, but is all for the death penalty.
I'm gonna put it this way. my friends on the other side, they say this. They say that, you know, they're pro-life. I'm gonna tell you what they are. They're hypocrites. Because what happens to the folks in Tennessee? There are over 400,000 people in the state of Tennessee that simply don't have health care insurance. But guess what they do? They refuse to expand Medicaid so those folks can have long lives and prosperous lives. They're hypocrites. But in addition to that, look at our foster care system. There's hundreds and thousands of children in our foster care system, and they have nowhere to go because our elected leaders who say they're pro-life won't put any funding into that. We have over 1 million people in the state of Tennessee who live in food deserts, but they're pro-life. No, the truth of the matter is, I'm not going to say that. We're going to be nice today. We're going to be PG-13. They're full of it. And I mean, that's the only way to put it. They're full of it. And I know that's the same across this country, across the South. But, you know, we have hundreds of people on all of these streaming platforms that's ready for change. And there's a couple other questions. Can you give me a few others?
Yeah, another statement that we have is from Brandon from Facebook, who stated they don't care. It seems that they don't care about our lives. They only care about our control. And again, that was Brandy from Facebook.
Well, Brandy, you're right. You understand. Let me tell it this way. So I know we all remember the beginning of COVID. And the folks on the far right was saying COVID was fake and you can't make folks wear masks and the government is interfering with our right of privacy and bodily autonomy. But that same group pushed for the Supreme Court to actually take away the right to privacy. That's what hypocritical looks like. And they are the epitome of hypocrites. We have to talk specifically about that. We have a couple questions on TikTok, and I do not want to miss you all out. And I think it's Jacqueline. Jacqueline, you know, mentioned the fact the number of nurses are dwindling. Absolutely. We're not supporting healthcare workers. We're not supporting educators. In the majority of the states in the South, we're not doing these things. Because the truth of the matter is they're trying to control everything, but they don't understand that when you have a group of folks who saying enough is enough, and I see that all across this country and specifically in my hometown of Tennessee. Folks in Tennessee have said enough is enough. Everywhere you go, you will see people rallying saying, not today.
Right. Well, Councilman Smiley, I've heard you say before that it takes elected officials and activism from civilians in order to enact real change. Would you care to speak a little bit on that and exactly what the role of private citizens is?
Absolutely. So I'm gonna speak specifically to an event that occurred in my hometown. So there was a particular restaurant, a very affluent restaurant that folks frequent, and you know they discriminated against people who look like me. They said people who look like me weren't allowed to sit downstairs in front of the big windows because they was worried about their Caucasian customers, their rich customers, seeing black people in their restaurants. So they would make black people go upstairs unless you were elected or what they consider an influence or with someone else was elected. So in the middle of the council meeting, I started getting word of this and I suspended the rules and I had the city administration give me their contract to have with the city. And you know what I said? I held the contract in my hand and I said, you will no longer do business in the city of Memphis until you change your ways. But what they did not know, while I'm holding their contract in the hand, I was also in conversation with a local activist named LJ. And shout out to LJ because she did phenomenal work for helping organize the protests in the city of Memphis. And every single day, until we figured out who the corporate was that was working in that company implementing these policies, LJ and I text. She would say, hey, any progress? I would say, no, I hope you're protesting. She said, you know we are. And every single day in every restaurant, there were a group of 10 protesters yelling, making them lose business and letting them know, hey, you're going to a racist restaurant. Every single day. It took about a week and a half until they figured out which owner was implementing these racist policies. They bought their owner out, but not only did the owner was bought out, they started hiring a diverse staff. They brought in a diverse ownership group. They brought in a diverse PR firm because they understood that activism, coupled with an elected official who understands how to use their platform, could make real change. And we find ourselves in that very same moment where we need people who are sick and tired of government coming into our houses telling us what we can do, who we can marry, how we should love, that they're talking about it, that they're marching in the streets, that they're holding up signs, that they're showing up to the capitals, that they're showing up to their city halls. And at some point, we have to make it politically impossible to vote against the people. If we continue to sit out, let me tell you this. Majority of the states in the South, when we talk about red states, they're not red states. They're non-voting states. And, you know, all of my adult life, what I heard is this. I heard that Tennessee was a red state. Then I started looking. I became more informed, and then I realized Tennessee was a non-voting state. Particularly, we're 47th and 45th. 47 during midterms as it relates to voter participation, and 45th in the midterms as it relates to voter registration.
And that's in the country, 47 to 45th in the country?
Yes, in the country. We are near the bottom. And what I found to be true, that's true for almost every red state in the South. They implement laws to make it not convenient to vote. They implement laws to deter us from voting. They build voter apathy. When election season comes, they don't spend any money promoting, hey, it's election time. They try to fly under the radar. But people all across this country are paying attention to what is happening. So I'm encouraged. There's another question. So MB from TikTok stated that the only moral abortion is my own. Yes, you're right on that, MB. And we're seeing several comments talking about inspiration to vote. As much as I want to inspire you to vote, I hope what they're doing to us motivates you to bring somebody else to the polls. Because they may be knocking on your door today, or maybe knocking on your neighbor's door today, but tomorrow they're gonna be knocking on your door. And then they may be knocking on the door of your friends. And my father would say it this way. He would say that when my sister struggles or my brother struggles, so do I. And we cannot sit by or stand by and allow this to happen. And we can change it this way. Early voting in Tennessee starts on July 15th. That's in 2 days. If you don't like what's happening in our state, go to the polls. If you don't like what's happening in your state, go to the polls. I'm tired of people saying voting does not matter. Well, ask the folks who want to exercise their reproductive healthcare decisions, however they so choose, if voting matters. Because the governors all across the state have the authority to make it happen.
And we have a question from Twitter. Gay Fawn from Twitter asks, so what is your position about the women that want to terminate and don't have the money or travel means, even if the location is in the same state? Some poor women may not have the money or vehicle.
Absolutely. So, I'm gonna give them. When I say them, there are some conservative folks in my city who always wonder, what else progressive that I'm gonna do. I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do, and I've been trying to figure out a workaround because I know that our General Assembly is paying particular attention to what legislation that we bring forth in an attempt to preempt us to take our authorities away. I'm gonna tell you what they do in another city, and I'm gonna tell you I'm thinking about doing something similar, but I'm gonna have to do something different. I don't want to give it all the way before they can take away my authority to legislate. What they did in another city is the city government is starting to provide funding for those individuals who are attempting to exercise their reproductive rights. They're providing funding for travel, provide funding for lodging so they can go in those places. And I think that's something that in this moment of resistance that we should be pushing our legislative bodies to do. Because there's resources everywhere. The question is, what are your priorities? Is your priorities the right to privacy and bodily autonomy, or is your priorities to do the bidding of big business and forgetting about people and leaving us behind?
Well, Councilman Smiley, Jacqueline from TikTok asks, facts are great, but what will you do as governor about this?
Absolutely. So what I tell people all the time is, look at my record. We have decriminalized abortion in the city of Memphis, but we have to understand the role of government. And I tell, folks want the governor to come in and automatically change things. There's some things that the governor can do, but there's some things that's in the wheelhouse of the legislative body. The governor is supposed to be the essentially chief executive officer, the enforcement officer of the laws that is implemented by the legislative body. But I'm gonna tell you what my track record tells you. My track record tells you that I can get things done with folks who don't think like me, folks who are more conservative than me, because what my skill set tells us is I'm good at negotiation. I'm good at getting people to see things just like the folks in our community. One of the very first things that I will do once I'm elected as governor of the state of Tennessee, I'm going to build strong relationships. I'm going to hire a staff that keeps track and tabs on every single member of the General Assembly. Because once you have those relationships, once you understand the things that are important to the folks you're working with, you can create real change. So one of the first things we do, we empower district attorneys. We provide them resources when they're fighting against these unconstitutional laws. I know the Supreme Court got it wrong, and I'm certain that what they did, what we're doing in these states is unconstitutional. I'm certain about it. But we have to empower district attorneys not to prosecute. We have to build relationships so that we can bring these issues back up as relates to bodily autonomy. And we have to stop preempting local governments that want to fill in the gap for some of these devastating laws. But, I'm going to be very clear how we can fight against it, even if the laws stay into place. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do if I ever see a case come before me, or if I ever see a case that's specifically related to somebody attempting to exercise their reproductive rights, or a physician attempting to help someone exercise their reproductive rights, and someone is charged or convicted, an immediate pardon for me. Immediate. Because there's no reason that we should be talking. We live in a society and there's no real separation between church and state. And our country was another reason. Our country was founded on the idea of religious freedom, but now we're trying to force people to believe a certain way. It's utterly ridiculous.
And it's funny that you brought that up. That was going to be my next comment, was Nika from TikTok, who wanted to ask, what are your feelings on the separation of church and state?
You have to separate the two. I made a comment yesterday talking about, the role of the judicial branch of government. And it's real simple. It's applying the law to the facts. And that's it. But what happened in our Supreme Court, they did not apply the law. They applied the law, the facts. Then they said, oh, let me bring in this religion as well. The reason that there needs to be a separation of the church and state is because one of our core beliefs, or constitutional beliefs, our constitutional requirements, is the separation of church and state. But they like to hide behind this thought that they can use words, so they can use legal terms to dance around the fact that they're still bringing in religion into our judicial system. It's problematic. And we have to do a better job of vetting judges, vetting candidates for elected office. If I can be direct with you all, we've been asleep. We've been asleep throughout this entire process, and we woke up with our rights being taken away. But I know everyone's awake now.
Right.
Now, the question is not about what they did, so they're doing going forward. And we will resist.
I agree. Jerry from TikTok asks, will you condemn Christian nationalism?
This is what I'm condemning. I'm condemning uh, folks implementing or bringing their religion into government. There has to be a clear separation. Because what I tell some of my more conservative friends when they're trying to bring their religion into government, I say, imagine how angry you would be if someone elected a person of a different faith and they made you believe the way that they believe. You would be out in the streets. You would be up in arms. You would be angry about it. Religion has no place in our government. It really does not. There are laws to keep us safe. There are laws to keep our communities clean. But there should not be laws to dictate how someone is going to live their life and what they're going to do with their own bodies. That simply should not happen.
That's very true. And recently, I believe they passed something in regards to bringing prayer back into school as well, um, here in Tennessee.
Absolutely. So I was also reading another question. So what was your question that I'm going to address? Yusuf again. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, address Yusuf.
Also, Yusuf, of course we don't vote for Supreme Court justices. We don't. But guess who we do vote for? We vote for United States senators who confirm. We vote for a president who nominates. We vote for them. But we also, on the lower level, before a case even gets to the Supreme Court, we vote for local judges. We vote for circuit court judges. We vote for people who appoint appellate court judges. Voting gets us we put these people in a position, whether we like it or not, by voting or the lack thereof. And in a lot of places across this country, it's a lack thereof. And just like I said before, we've been asleep. We have to wake up. And your question?
Oh no, I was just speaking if you had anything to say about the recent changes that they've made in Tennessee in regards to bringing prayer back into school.
I really believe that Tennessee, Mississippi, Florida, and Texas are battling it out for the worst of the worst. And yeah, we're battling it out, and we're battling it out not because we don't have elected leaders who care. We're battling it out because they care. But guess what they care about? They care about big dollars, big donors, and ways that they can implement their religion across the board, not just in schools, everywhere we go, into the courts. If you pay particular attention to some of the discussion about when Justice Ketanji Brown was, going through the confirmation process, they were asking a whole lot of questions, and none of the questions seemed to deal with the law. It never dealt with her credentials. It never dealt with her ability to apply the law to the facts and the fact that she would not bring in her religion. It dealt with all of their personal beliefs, all of their religions, but nothing to do with the role that she was serving as justice of the Supreme Court. And it's problematic.
That's true. Well, I want to thank you and thank you all for joining us. But before we end, Councilman Smiley, I did want to ask you to speak a little bit on what prompted you and inspired you to run to be the Democratic nominee for governor and eventually the governor of Tennessee.
Well, if I can speak, we received that word. We will win. We will win on August 4th, and we'll also win again on November 8th. What prompted my run for governor is one of the same things that prompted my run for city council. And I looked around my district and realized that our leadership simply was not serving the people. When I got into office or got into politics, this is what they stated. I was talking to all of my friends, and they said, "Well, I think you're in a prime position to run." I said, "Well, I'm not going to run." They said, "Well, do me a favor, go have a conversation with the person who's considering to run." And I go sit down and have a conversation with the person. And what he told me specifically was, I said, "Why are you running?" He said, "Well, I think I can win." And, me being extremely idealistic at the point of time in my political career, I just knew he was going to say something about serving the people because in the district that I live in, it was also the poorest zip code in the state. There was a study that said that people who live in my community had a life expectancy of 13 years fewer than the more affluent community across the town. And I knew he was going to talk about one of those issues. But the truth of the matter is, he didn't even mention the people. He just said, I looked at the numbers. We have the resources. We can win. You know, and at that point, I was so angry because I wanted someone seeking office. And I assumed at this point in time in my career that folks who were seeking office actually, gave a damn about people. And then once I realized the folk that serve us that did not give a damn about us, I said, you know what? It won't be my mother. It won't be my friend. It won't be the folks in my community who get left behind, because I understood my moment to step up and use the skill sets that I've gathered in my life was right then. And we ran hard campaign. We came up short, but we didn't sit out because we understood what was happening. Developers paying people off. I think my friend Yusuf stated on Instagram that they were paying people off. They were bought and sold. The great thing, about my candidacy and about, me as an individual, I don't work for anybody. I work for the people. I work for the people as a solo practitioner lawyer. I work for the people as a member of the Memphis City Council. You couldn't buy me off. You couldn't buy me off. I just wanted someone to say, you know what? I care about this community. I lived in this community. I understand what's happening in this community. But they weren't saying that. So we ran, and we ran well. We were outraised 4-1, but we still won because we went into the communities. We spoke to the people. We learned the issues, and we did a good job of advocating. And in this race, every time the city of Memphis attempts to do something progressive, we attempted to decriminalize marijuana in Shelby County. Big brother, Governor Bill Lee, we call the devil by the name here. Governor Bill Lee came in and said, if you decriminalize marijuana, you stop locking people up for smoking weed. If you take it off the books, we're going to sue the city of Memphis. So, of course, that didn't happen. And then we attempt to do the common sense thing in the city of Memphis, which was remove Confederate statues out of a predominantly black city. Just like that, Big Brother came in and said, if you remove those Confederate statues out the city of Memphis, a predominantly black city, we're going to take $250,000 from your city. We removed the statues anyway, and they took $250,000 out of the city. Most recently, we attempted to, we listened to our community who wanted their police department to reside in their community and not live 2 hours away, so we implemented a residency requirement. And just like that, Big Brother came into our community, Governor Bill Lee, and said, if you do that, we're going to preempt you. We're going to create a law where you cannot make that decision. So we created the law. The law was in place for all of about 4 or 5 months. And then we were preempted on the state level and said, you can't make decisions, progressive decisions for your community, or we will preempt you. So the reason I'm running is to better be an advocate for the people of the state of Tennessee. We don't need Big Brother. We don't need state coming in and attempting to make decisions that should be local decisions. We don't need Big Brother, Governor Bill Lee, to come in and say, you know what, women don't have the right or not entitled to make decisions for their body. We don't need Governor Bill Lee to tell us that, we're going to continue to price people out of their homes, allow big developers to come in and remove you out of your homes. We need to be investing in affordable healthcare. We need to be investing in affordable homes. We need to be decriminalizing marijuana. Let me take a step further. We need to be legalizing marijuana in the state of Tennessee. Like, we have to do that. And think about this. You know how we're using Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube right now to talk to folks? But over 500,000 people in the state of Tennessee simply do not have good access to internet service. And we're not doing anything about it. I tell people this all the time. We are going in the wrong direction in every major statistical category. We're number one in the bankruptcy rate. We have the third highest violent crime rate in the country and the fourth lowest median income. We can do so much better if we elect someone who understands what it's like to struggle in Tennessee. I see my campaign manager, y'all. She's in the comments. She's bossing me around again.
Well, Councilman Smiley, we've enjoyed speaking with you, and thank you all for joining us. Before you go, we do want to play your commercial. that has been running. And while you guys stay and watch that, we're going to be in the chat box and answering a few questions for you. So if you just please check this out.
With me to a better Tennessee.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, oh Lord, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land where I am bound. I am bound. Yes, there'll be freedom in that land where I am bound.
I'm JB Smiley Jr. I grew up singing this song in church. You may know it as well. While the melodies may differ, its message of peace, freedom, and justice for all people unites us as Tennesseans. So today, I'm announcing my run for governor, and I'm inviting you all to come and go with me to a better Tennessee. I grew up in Memphis, in one of the poorest zip codes in the state. But my shot out was perfecting this shot and going to college on both an academic and basketball scholarship. Then I got a law degree to help give back, and I am proudly serving my community on the Memphis City Council. I decided to run for governor because right now there are too many shots fired, not enough shots given, and too few shots for our young people to reach their full potential. As governor, I will reduce crime by implementing a robust community policing program. And I'll fund prevention programs focused on those most likely to commit violent crime, because everyone deserves to be safe in their homes and communities. I will encourage folks across this state to do right by each other. That means getting vaccinated. And I'll ensure Tennesseans have access to healthcare no matter where they live. And I will make it a priority to give our young people a real shot at success with state-of-the-art vocational training in every high school and partnerships with our business leaders to create pathways to the jobs that will help the next generation stay here in Tennessee. So today, I'm hoping you all will come and go with me. Let's go build a better Tennessee together. All right, so that commercial was really fun to shoot. It's a good times. But before we go, I want to encourage you all to go to our website, votejbsmiley.com, and click on policies. I think we have about 11 policies that clearly outlines the issues of this campaign and my policy positions on everything. I think what makes me different than any other candidate is more than just, a general overview of my thoughts, but it also talks for almost every issue. It talks about a specific plan on how we will get these things done. And also, we have a lot of gear. So go to our shop page, our store page, and order some merchandise. Donate to this campaign. Early voting is just 2 days away. It's Friday, July 15th. If you believe that states like ours, red states, can have real progressive change, you will put a progressive at the top of the ticket. You will put a progressive at the top of the ticket. We can turn this day blue. And like I always say, if you've listened to some of my videos, we can turn this day blue, and it's going to take each and every one of you.
Pointing at all the cameras.
all of them.
So again, early voting starts Friday. It's most important. You have to vote. You have to vote. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your comments. We appreciate you staying and asking us questions. But most importantly, you got to vote. So it starts Friday, and the early voting is through the 30th. There's 2 weeks of early voting. And then, as we know, Election Day is August 4th. And again, the website to check out more information on the campaign, donate, receive merch is votejbsmiley.com. If you're watching on your computer or on somebody else's phone, there's a QR code right here. You can scan it. And thank you for joining us.
See y'all later. And I'm going to stay on TikTok. So get on TikTok if you haven't. We're going to stay on TikTok a little bit longer. See y'all later. Bye-bye. Thank you, Christiana. And Lynn, thank you, I guess.